Hello and welcome to this inaugural episode of our brand new video style podcast here at TBC22. My name is Thomas Stockting, I'm the local reporter here and I will be the main host throughout this series. We will try and obviously get in as many volunteers in the community that wish to host and tackle some topics and speak to some important local community members as well. So of course, as always, if you want to get implicated with the station, do get in touch with us. I know it's very hard at the moment with the current restrictions we're all going through, but we're always looking for some more hands on deck. This podcast is going to be named Uncovered and in French Révélé, and we're really going to be diving into some of the important people within our community. So without any further ado, let me introduce to you my first guest, Mr. Tim Halderson, who is a community volunteer and is heavily implicated across the region of Clarence Rockland, as well as further beyond in a variety of things. And Tim and I actually met for the first time probably on my second day of work here, via Zoom, unfortunately. But Tim, welcome on the show. Glad to have you.
Thank you very much, Thomas, and I remember that day well.
How are you doing anyway? How are the new measures? How are they affecting your life at the moment?
I'm a retired police officer, so like many retirees, I'm basically more at home than out in the community. But it really hasn't affected me greatly, other than I'm limited in my social contacts. My son lives in town, and so they are my social bubble, he and his family, and that I'm thankful I have that. I do have friends and family that I keep in touch with, like all of us, through chats and emails and Facebook and so on, but it hasn't affected me as much as some, and I'm, I guess, thankful for that. And in the midst of all of this, I just completed a move over the weekend, so it's been an interesting time for me and for our entire community.
Well, first of all, I have to jump on that immediately. I myself am moving, not this weekend coming, but the weekend after. And how did you find the experience of having to move during all of this? I mean, I'm trying to book a U-Haul at the moment, and it's impossible.
Yes, and I was assisted by movers because I have a number of heavy pieces that I used to move, but I'm not going to put myself through that challenge, and I'm kind of glad I did because I'm in a third floor walk-up apartment, so it was quite something to see them. But the amazing thing was, by mid-afternoon on Saturday, I had moved from a condo on the Rockland Golf Course to an apartment on Carroll Street, and everything was in place. I was astonished, and now it's just a matter of sorting things out and getting things in place and all.
That was a rather fast turnaround. I hope I can turn mine around just as quickly as you could. I actually saw something online the other day which said, once you're over the age of 35, hire movers. None of your friends want to put their back out for a slice of cold pizza and a stale beer, which struck home a lot as I tried to entice some friends of mine to do it with me. But Tim, we're here obviously to chat today about a variety of things involving your own implication within the community. As mentioned towards the very start of this chat, I said that you and I met via Zoom for an interview back in October last year, and that was to discuss the blood donor clinic. So I really wanted to ask you today, when did you first get involved with the blood donor clinic, and why do you think it's so important to try and continuously keep that roster of donors in the community updated?
I personally got involved 20 years ago when the Knights of Columbus Council was established here in Rockland at the English Catholic Parish at the time. But Rockland has been donating to Canadian Blood Services for many years, as long as they've had clinics in the community. And I'm not sure how long that is, but I think it's been almost forever, because they do go out to outlying communities as well as having clinics in the Ottawa area. But we took it on as a project of community service, and now we do it 5 times a year. Each clinic has, about 100 donors. We'll have 80 to 100 units donated, and each unit of blood that's donated has is broken up into three parts: red blood cells, platelets, and plasma.
Hmm.
And so potentially each unit can benefit three patients. So if you do the math, you could see each clinic could easily benefit 200, 250 patients, and we have 5 clinics a year. So, it's a 1,000, conservatively a year units donated by the community, and over 20 years, that really adds up.
As you say,
So
there's been a very long implication of blood donors in Rockland. Have you ever struggled to fill up the clinics, or has it always been something the community has always really come out to participate in?
our clinics are usually fully booked, and that's, I think, a credit to the loyalty of the community. But one statistic that I'll mention is that nationwide, only 4% of Canadians actually donate blood. And yet we assume, and particularly in these times, that we go to the hospital and we need blood and it'll be there of the type that we need. And somehow we've managed. But actually Canada purchases blood from abroad because we don't have enough in our voluntary collection system. In the States, they actually pay donors in many communities, and that has led to some problems. They actually have paid donors in prisons, for example, where needle usage and that sort of thing is not carefully as controlled as it might be. So although Canadian Blood Services screens whatever blood they use very carefully, and there
Yes,
have been no
absolutely. I mean,
problem.
I know myself, like I'm from the United Kingdom, and having been born in the early 90s, I'm actually not eligible to donate blood here in Canada. I did look into it. You were talking there about the fact that there is a little bit of a lack of blood across the nation, as Canada's having to purchase some of it abroad. What would you say some of the reasons are that not enough people are coming out and donating blood? Is it a lack of awareness? Is it a lack of understanding? Does the government not giving it enough of a marketing push? What do you think it is?
I don't think it's marketing, because I think Canadian Blood Services is out there on social media. It comes down to something as basic as people don't like getting needles. And it's really a psychological issue, I think. Yes, we need to make the community aware of when and where the blood donor clinics are being held, but and the process, perhaps people imagine that it's going to take a long time. Typically, it's about an hour, and it's if you can take the needle, which in my experience is virtually painless. It's like getting a vaccination. Many of us are lining up for or making appointments for COVID vaccinations now, and don't hesitate to do that. That's because of COVID being life-threatening. Well, this is life-giving, giving blood. So I think it's partly that fear of needles, and it's partly awareness of the need, assuming, it'll always be there. They're not aware, perhaps, of the problem, and maybe that needs to be featured. That there is a supply nationally, but it is, I would say, meeting the needs, but barely.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I like that phrase that you used there, that the vaccination is used because the virus is life-threatening, whereas actually donating blood is life-giving. And you make a really interesting point there as well, that perhaps everyone getting injected now might actually help some people with a psychological fear of needles. It might actually help them break down that barrier, and we never know, we might see some more people. Talking about the clinics here in Rockland though, obviously there was one last October. Am I correct in saying there's one coming up very soon as well?
Yes, it's fully booked, but there is a clinic this Friday at River Rock Inn. I have checked, and as of a few days ago, all of the appointments were filled. But what typically happens is that some donors are not feeling well on the day of, and so they simply won't show up. And what happens is you're left with a vacant number of appointments. Recently, during the pandemic, I think some people have assumed that, well, the clinics are not an essential service, whereas in fact they are, and they have continued. They're very careful with screening and social distancing within the clinic. Everyone is masked, and the flow of the donors through the clinic is very carefully managed and monitored. So it's a safe place to go and to give. Of course, they use sterile equipment and very, very competent and professional blood takers. There's a technical term for them that I can't pronounce, but at any rate, it's something that is impressive to see in spite of the limitations of the pandemic.
So Tim, how far does your involvement with the blood donor clinics go? Are you just in helping in like organising behind the scenes and collecting people? Are you there on the day as well? How involved are you?
Yes, typically volunteers for Canadian Blood Services, and we what we do is we'll look after the refreshment recovery area, and in the pandemic also we have a person that assists at the front in the greeting and screening process. And again, they're masked and they keep socially distant, but they'll have a list of appointments. They'll check people in at the appropriate time. If they're there well in advance of their appointment, we'll have them wait in the car until it's time, so that people are spaced out, and of course welcoming them, and of course the role of the volunteer. They've cut down the numbers at the refreshment and recovery area, but what we do is keep an eye on the donors as they are leaving, and make sure they recommend they stay for 10 or 15 minutes before they leave, just in case they feel any after effects. We do this at the COVID vaccination clinics as well, and it happens occasionally that someone will they'll start to bleed from the point where the needle was put in, just lightly, but all it requires is that it be bandaged and wrapped, or else they may be feeling faint. And occasionally, so we'll call over the staff, and they'll deal in a very professional way with anyone who, and this would be, again, exceptional, like one in several hundred where this happens. So we're there to welcome the donors, keep an eye on them, thank them, offer them some refreshments, cookies and juice and coffee. Well, we do, actually they don't serve coffee anymore, but liquids just to replenish the fluid lost in the blood, which is only a small percentage. It's 5 or 10% of the total blood volume that is taken out, and it's regenerated, replenished by the body in a matter of hours and days.
Yeah, it's incredible, the body's ability to replenish like that. And I think a lot of it is breaking down. I wouldn't call it a stigma, but there is maybe a little bit of lack of understanding of the whole procedure. You mentioned there that coffee was taken away. In the UK, we don't really get juice. We get a cup of tea with a good lump of sugar in it and a cookie, as you would imagine. Tim, you said that obviously your involvement with the blood donor clinic stems from your involvement with the Knights of Columbus as well here in Rockland, right? Can you talk to us a little bit about the St. Edith Stein's Knight of Columbus and how you got involved there, and what is the organization? What's the group?
Yes, it's a fraternal organization, meaning it's for men. Many of your viewers may have heard of the Catholic Women's League as well, which is sort of the equivalent organization on the women's side of the parish. So it's a group of parishioners, of men who commit to supporting each other, to supporting the church in any way that they can. Typically, many Knights of Columbus are ushers. They'll serve in other capacities, in other ways. I mean, they may do that individually, but it's really encouraged by the Knights. It's an international organization that has councils throughout North America, in Europe, and in Asia. And so many of these councils do what we do, which is fundraise, particularly during the pandemic. There's a lot of stories of councils that have done food drives or helped out in the community in ways that support those working the pandemic. It's also involved in through the Pope and the Church throughout the world in dealing with crises in the Middle East, for example, supporting persecuted Christians in particular in Iraq and other parts of the Middle East, but not limiting themselves to Christian communities, but in other ways as well. So it's quite the organization. The number of hours donated by volunteers is incredible. It's millions throughout the world when it's totaled up. Many nights are involved, like St. Edith Stein Council, in projects like the blood donor clinic. So they do a tremendous amount of good throughout the world in that regard. And it's an organization that also comes to the aid of people at times of crisis. For example, as a result of a bereavement, or if there's a loss. One of our Brother Knights, his family, one of the members of his family was the victim of a fire, and they lost everything. So help was directed to that family in need, and that's the sort of thing that we do on a regular basis. We're based in Rockland, but as I said, most of our members are from this area, but now we serve a much larger area, and we have members from Cumberland and the east end of Orleans, and together we look after food banks in Rockland, Cumberland, Orleans, and other charities that serve our communities.
And am I right in saying that this sort of amalgamation, this joint up with the Cumberland and Orleans community is a bit of a recent change, a recent move?
Yes, it is. The new parish is a year and a half, 2 years old. But as I said, it's an amalgamation of two parish communities. So it's just a matter of, we're a larger parish in total. In fact, there's land purchased near the Cumberland Museum where a new church will be built to accommodate a larger parish. And we expect, with the growth of our Orleans out towards Cumberland and even Rockland, that there will be in fact, we have quite a few new members, particularly since we started doing the live stream and drive-in masses, that are attending from the east end of the city, as well as those of us that come from Rockland and the surrounding area that go to that parish, which is in the little white church you see just before the lights in Cumberland on your right. It's on the riverside.
And Tim, you obviously, I'm going to take a stab in the dark here and say that you are religious yourself. So how did you come and get involved with the Knights to begin with? Well, I've been in Rockland since 1973. I was originally posted here as a member of the O.P.P. I am a Toronto boy, and so it was quite a change for me, but I came to love the area. And so I was looking around for a parish to go to. And at the time, English Catholics had Mass at St. Trinity Church in Rockland. In the latter part of the 90s, a decision was made for the English Catholic parish to go off on its own and hopefully establish its own church. So that we were there for about, the better part of 15 years, meeting in a gym at St. Patrick's School. So we'd have to set up for the Mass and then put away all the chairs and all of the things needed to celebrate Mass every Sunday. Probably prepped you for that quick move recently as well, that putting up and putting back down super quickly. Yeah, it was, because it really did involve a lot of moving. But at any rate, after about 15 years of that, the opportunity came to amalgamate with the parish in Cumberland. The Archdiocese decided that the two parishes together would be stronger than two smaller parishes that were, to some extent, struggling. Financially, it's quite the undertaking to carry on religious activities in a parish, and so it definitely has worked out for the benefit of both groups of Catholics. And you mentioned, Tim, that you're a Toronto boy and you moved up here due to your placement with the O.P.P. and you fell in love with the area. How did you find the contrast from moving from the bigger city to come out here to a rural part of Eastern Ontario that is very francophone as well? That must have been a big life change for you. What swayed you into staying here?
Yes, indeed, it was a big change, but I loved it. Toronto, even then, was it's grown tremendously since, as anyone who's been there has seen. But I used to think nothing of going. When I went to York University, it would take me the better part of an hour to get there, and I didn't live that far away. Traffic certainly was the big thing, but I love the francophone nature of this community. I actually didn't hear a word of French until I was in grade 7 or 8, and when we started, and it was taught to us very much like Latin or Greek. We were very strong grammatically, but don't ask us to speak. And it wasn't until I traveled in Europe and lived in Europe for a year in Italy that I found French to be, well, I always loved it, but I found it to be a very well accepted language for throughout the world. And when I came to Rockland, I was speaking basically a more academic version of French. So there I was out on the road speaking to people who hardworking people, farmers and the like. And it took me a while to adapt to the French spoken around here, which has some joual in it, some of the slang and so on. But you adapted very quickly if you had the will. And so I've done so over the years. I actually remained in Rockland because I met my wife and her family. They were from around here. The family name is Pigeon on my wife's side, and they're all in both sides of the valley, but particularly Plantagenet and that area. So it was an encouragement for me to stay in the area, and as a result, I transferred to Nepean Police, and then after amalgamation, ended up with Ottawa Police while living in this area.
Well, I could have taken another shot in the dark there and assumed that one stays for love. I mean, it does tend to be the common trend as well. But interesting what you're saying about the different kind of dialects. There is always that assumption that because we know in English, even in Canada, the States, England, there are so many different English dialects, different accents, different slang terms. But sometimes you take for granted when it's a foreign language that they have it too. Whereabouts in Italy did you live, Tim?
I lived in Bergamo, which is north of Milan, and actually was there for a training course. For a period of time, I was a Montessori teacher, and you can take a training course there, and it was actually given by one of Maria Montessori's nephews. Interesting, talk about how to learn a language. The course was given in Italian, but it had a sentence-by-sentence translation into English. So, if you listened, and you had to, you very quickly picked up an understanding of the language. And living in the community, if you were going to survive, you had to speak. And if you put your mind to it, I recall when I crossed the border sitting there in the train, and I had my English Italian for Dummies book, and went from there to being able to be reasonably fluent in a period of about a year. I really loved the area. It was in the foothills of the Alps, and was a great experience with a group of people from all over the world attending this Montessori teacher training center.
Well, Tim, you have been all over the place, and I'm sure the French as well there would have, with that Latin root, would have helped you out with your Italian as well. Just as we tail on towards the end of this conversation now, because I feel like time flies by, as it always does with these chats. But I just want to bring back around to volunteering in the community, because it's something you're heavily involved in. Has that always been something that you've been interested in, and why do you hold volunteering as such an important thing to do for a local community?
Well, I think if you think of the qualities of a good community, it's that we look after each other, we care for each other. There's so much that goes on. For example, I have a son who's now almost 40, and yet growing up, he was involved in different activities that relied on volunteers. He was in Beavers, which is a precursor of Scouts. He was involved in a number of sports, and these sort of things would not happen without volunteers. It does so much good for us as families. The volunteers who run the Rockland Help Center, for example, are amazing. And there are so many families that rely on that just to get through their days and their weeks. Those that are less fortunate or have tragic circumstances, like the family that was burnt out recently. We absolutely wouldn't have the community that we do, that so many people love to live in, if we didn't have so many people volunteering in so many different ways and capacities.
Well, fantastic. Well, Tim, again, just a little reminder for people when the next blood donor clinic is here at the end of this conversation. When is it? Is it Friday this week, is it?
Yes, Friday, April 23rd at River Rock. And if you were so inclined, you can always check on appointment availability. Just go to www.blood.ca, or the 188 number is easy to remember. It's 1-888-2-DONATE, and you can connect with very quickly and find out if an appointment is available. There are upcoming clinics at Orleans United Church and the Community Pentecostal Church in the next month as well that may have appointments available. And we'll be back in about 3 months. So it's, let's see, April, May, June, July. In the summer, there'll be another clinic in Rockland that you could book for probably now, as soon as the dates are open.
Well, fantastic, Tim. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. We barely scratched the surface with all the things that I'd written down on my paper to discuss with you today. The half hour kind of just flew by there. So thank you again for coming on. Thank you again for everything you do within the community, and obviously for promoting the important issues as well, in this one particular being blood donorship. So thank you for coming on, and thank you very much for watching, listening to, enjoying, consuming in whatever way you can this first episode of our new podcast here at TVC 22. Make sure you go and like, subscribe, do all of the things on the social media channels to make sure you keep up to date with the latest content from Clarence Rockland. And a little reminder, as Tim said, the blood donor clinic is this Friday. If you're booked up for it but you're feeling a little unwell and you can't attend, do let them know, because they obviously have a list of people who can come and fill in that spot as well. And if you're interested in donating blood within the community, then as Tim said, please head to the website, the Canadian government website, and you could potentially even book a spot to donate some blood in the summer for this year. So thanks again for watching, and we will be back with another episode pretty soon. Bye.